A prince climbed onto a wooden horse before an entire royal court. He expected applause. Instead, he disappeared into the sky, and no one knew whether he would ever return. This is Simple Tales. Long before airplanes crossed the heavens, storytellers in the Arabian Nights imagined machines that blurred the line between invention and magic. Among the most remarkable is the tale of the Ebony Horse. Long ago in the kingdom of Persia, during the Great New Year festival, King Saber held a magnificent celebration. Sages and inventors arrived from distant lands bearing extraordinary gifts. 3 stood out among them. One presented a golden peacock that spread its jeweled tail and sang at the changing of each hour. Another unveiled a silver trumpet that would sound whenever enemies approached the kingdom. The third was an Indian sage who led forward a horse carved from polished ebony. Every detail was so lifelike that the court gathered in wonder. The sage bowed before the king and made a bold claim. This mechanical marvel, he said, could carry its rider across vast distances in a single day, farther than an ordinary horse could travel in a year. To prove it, he mounted the horse, turned a hidden peg near its neck, and rose smoothly into the air. He circled high above the palace before descending once more. The king was astonished. Then the sage named his reward. He wished to marry one of the king's daughters. Before the king could answer, Prince Kamar al-Akmar stepped forward in anger. He believed such a reward unworthy of a royal princess. A heated argument followed. Impatient to test the invention himself, the prince mounted the ebony horse. Before the sage could explain its controls, he twisted the peg. The horse shot upward like an arrow. Cries of alarm rose as Persia fell away beneath him. The palace became a toy. The city became a blur. Soon, even the mountains disappeared. For a few moments, exhilaration filled him. Then came a terrible realization. He did not know how to come down. The wind roared in his ears. Clouds drifted beneath him. Hour after hour, the horse carried him across deserts, rivers, forests, and seas while the sun crossed the sky. At times, he looked down through breaks in the clouds and saw entire kingdoms passing beneath him. At other times, there was nothing but endless sky. His excitement faded into fear, and fear slowly gave way to determination. If the horse could rise, he reasoned, it must also be able to descend. At last, as evening approached, he discovered a second peg. Turning it carefully, the horse began to descend. As darkness settled, he guided it toward a great city and landed softly upon the roof of a magnificent palace. There he met Princess Shams al-Nahar, renowned throughout the kingdom for her beauty, wisdom, and learning. At first, startled by the stranger who seemed to have arrived from the heavens themselves, the princess soon grew curious. Night after night, they met in secret beneath the stars. The prince spoke of Persia's deserts, gardens, and bustling cities. The princess shared stories of her homeland and the palace below. Wonder became affection. Affection became love. But secrets rarely survive within royal palaces. The prince was discovered. Guards seized him. His tale of a flying horse sounded like madness to the court. Among his enemies was a jealous vizier who desired the princess for himself and demanded that the foreign stranger be punished. Meanwhile, far away in Persia, King Sabor mourned the disappearance of his son. The Indian sage was thrown into prison and blamed for the prince's fate. Separated and uncertain, Prince Kamar al-Akmar refused despair. Whenever he had the opportunity, he returned to the Ebony Horse and studied its hidden mechanisms. He learned which peg made it rise, which made it descend, how swiftly it could travel, how sharply it could turn. The machine that had once terrified him gradually became his greatest advantage. When he learned that the princess was to be forced into an unwanted marriage, he acted. One night, he recovered the horse and arranged a secret meeting upon the palace roof. The princess climbed behind him. As guards rushed forward with torches and shouts, the prince turned the peg. The ebony horse rose smoothly into the darkness. The palace lights shrank beneath them. Within moments, they were gone. Across deserts and seas they flew, carried by the marvelous machine that had first brought them together. At last, they reached Persia. King Sabah rejoiced at the return of his son. The imprisoned sage was released, and preparations began for the wedding of Prince Kamar al-Akmar and Princess Shams al-Nahar. It seemed that every hardship had finally come to an end. But the Indian sage had not forgotten his humiliation. He believed the princess should have been his reward, and he burned with resentment toward the prince. One day, while the royal court was distracted by celebrations, the sage secretly approached the princess, claiming he wished to show her the wonders of the ebony horse. He persuaded her to mount it with him. The moment she did, he turned the peg. The horse soared into the sky. Before anyone could stop him, he vanished beyond the horizon with the princess. Panic spread through the palace. The prince was devastated. Once again, the woman he loved had been carried away by the ebony horse. But this time, he was not the reckless youth who had first mounted the machine. He understood its secrets, and he was determined to bring her home. The prince set out in pursuit. His search led him across distant lands until news reached him of a strange foreign prisoner. In a faraway kingdom, people spoke of an old man who had arrived from the sky with a beautiful woman. The sage had been captured after drawing suspicion, while the princess was held under royal protection. Traveling in disguise, the prince entered the kingdom and sought a way to reach her. At last, he managed to meet the princess in secret. Together, they devised a plan. The prince convinced the local ruler that he possessed special knowledge of the strange flying horse. Curious to see the machine demonstrated, the ruler ordered it brought forth. The prince examined it calmly, concealing his excitement. Then he requested permission to test it. The ruler agreed. The prince mounted the ebony horse. The princess climbed behind him. Before anyone realized what was happening, he turned the peg. The horse leapt into the sky. Shouts erupted below, but they quickly faded into silence as the pair rose above the city. Once more, the ebony horse carried them across deserts, mountains, and seas. At last, they returned safely to Persia. This time, there would be no further separations. The prince and princess were married amid celebrations that lasted for many days, and the story of the marvelous ebony horse was told throughout the kingdom for generations. The ebony horse had nearly been the prince's undoing when he acted before he understood it. Yet, by learning its secrets, he transformed a source of danger into a means of freedom. The tale reminds us that courage may lift us into the unknown, but wisdom and understanding are what allow us to navigate it and find our way home. Thank you for joining this simple tale. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves myths, legends, and forgotten tales from around the world. Until the next one.